Hello, this video is on cardiovascular system. So we are going to focus on heart primarily in this video, but I want to give you a little bit background of the entire cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular system consists of course, heart. It consists of blood and the blood vessels. Blood vessels, arteries, and veins. So all these together form the cardiovascular system. The heart is very well studied over centuries. Okay, initially it was supposed, it was thought that heart is a seat of intelligence, but gradually we know the heart is actually a pumping station. It pumps blood to each and every part of your body. And when I say each and every part, I mean from the top of your body, which is the brain, to the toe of your body. So it gives blood or sends blood to every organ system, organs, tissues, and cells. And remember, when it pumps blood, the blood being the carrier of oxygen is required by every cell in order to be functional. Okay, so let's understand a little bit about the cardiovascular system, the structure of the heart in a PowerPoint, and then we will learn about it in a three-dimensional models. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. So the heart. So if you see the heart, it is basically nested between between the lungs. You can see it in here. So this is the heart, and these are the lungs in which it is nested in. If you remember, we learned about the cardiac notch in the lungs, and so you can see this, how the heart actually pretty much is so close together with the lungs. And the function of the heart, or the pumping of the blood through the two systems, which we will learn, is in conjunction with the respiratory system. The base actually of the heart sits posterior to the sternum. The sternum is here at the level of the third cartilage, centered about 1.2 centimeter to the left. So that's the reason the cardiac notch is formed. So if you see in here, as you can, the one that we just explained, I just explained, these are the lungs, and the heart is pretty much nested in here, in between the two lungs. Okay, so the position of the heart is very important because it is a highly sophisticated organ, and it needs to be in a cavity that it can't move, or it is not damaged by any small jerks. Okay, so going forward, let's understand the different connective tissues that are present in the heart. Remember, heart is a muscle. It is the cardiac muscles that are involved in it. And these cardiac muscles actually give the heart a lot of protection. Okay, so apart from that, which we will eventually learn, the heart is also covered by a pericardial sac. You can see it in here. This pericardial sac has a pericardial cavity, as you can see it in here. This cavity actually helps to give heart a protection, and a proper contour of the heart is formed by it also. So it allows the heart to breathe without any friction. It provides room for expansion, and definitely this is the first layer of protection for the heart. Then comes to the inner parts are three muscular layers, which is known as epicardium, endocardium, and myocardium. So if I say from the outermost to the innermost, it is epicardium, then comes myocardium, and then the endocardium. The epicardium is the outermost layer. The myocardium is the middle layer, and I would say one of the most important of it. And then comes the endocardium, which basically lines the entire ventricles or the chambers, which we will learn very, very soon. Then comes the cardiac muscles. The cardiac muscle, if you remember when we learned muscles, we learned that muscles are of three kinds. One is the skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. So here we are, the cardiac muscles. These are involuntary muscles. That means we do not have any control in how they contract and relax, okay? So if I want my heart to stop right now, it will not happen. The cardiac muscle cells are very important, and they are connected with each other by what is called intercalated discs. And these intercalated discs can be very well seen under the microscope. The cardiovascular system has two circuits that works hand in hand. So I want you to understand that these two circuits are going on simultaneously, okay? So the two circuits is, one is called the pulmonary circuit, which involves the lungs, and the other is the systemic circuit, which involves the rest of the parts of your body, okay? So then just to let you know before we go proceed that there are blood vessels involved in the cardiovascular system. Arteries and veins. Arteries take blood away from the heart, and veins actually visit the heart, okay? Arteries in general, which carry blood away from the heart, are oxygenated blood, and veins which visit the blood or go to the heart are usually deoxygenated. And I use the word usually because there is one exception to this rule, okay? So if you look in here, you will see that this is the heart, and the heart actually is aligned with two circuits. One is this circuit, which goes to the lungs. You can see it in here. This part is the pulmonary circuit, and the other is the systemic circuit, which is this and this. So heart pumps blood to the lungs, gets it oxygenated, and then it comes back to the heart and then is distributed again throughout the body. And we learn more about the flow of blood as we go along. So as I said, these are blood, there are blood vessels, they carry blood to the different parts of the body, and they bring blood to the heart for to send it to the lungs for its purification or oxygenation. Structure of the heart or anatomy of the heart is very important. So if you look in here, the heart has 4 chambers and has 4 valves, okay? So what are the chambers? This is the right atrium. This is chamber number 1. This is the right ventricle, which is chamber number 2. This is left atrium, which is chamber number 3, and has left ventricle, which is chamber number 4. So it has 4 chambers: right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle, okay? In addition to that, the ventricles are separated by what is known as interventricular septum, and the atria are separated by interatrial septum. I want you to notice one thing very clearly in here is the muscle layer, myocardium, that you see it in here, okay? The myocardium in the left ventricle is much thicker than the right ventricle. Do you see that here? So very, very clearly you can see that these muscles are much thicker than this muscle, and there's a reason for it, which we will do eventually, okay? So let's understand now. So apart from these 4 chambers, the heart also has 4 ventricles. What are ventricles? Ventricles are gateways through which the blood can actually pass from one part to the other. The reverse usually does not happen, okay? So there are 4 ventricles, so let's understand. From the right atria to the right ventricle, there is this valve, which is known as the right AV valve or the tricuspid valve, okay? Right AV valve means right atrioventricular valve, okay, or the tricuspid valve. There is another valve between this atria, from the left atria to the left ventricle. This is known as the left atrioventricle valve or the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. Why mitral? Because it looks like it's like a bishop's hat, and that's the reason it's known as the mitral valve. There are 2 other valves in addition to that, which are the semilunar valve. The first semilunar valve is between the left ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. So what is that pulmonary trunk? The pulmonary trunk actually takes blood from the ventricles to the lungs, okay? So there is one valve here which is known as the pulmonary semilunar valve or semilunar valve of the pulmonary trunk. Okay, the last valve that you will see is between the left ventricle and the aorta. Remember, aorta is the largest blood vessel, and the valve here is known as the aortic valve. So this actually is basically the general structure of the gross anatomy of the heart. We will do further, we will understand more. What are they? Is that you can see these string-like structure that are present in the valves, and these string-like structures are known as the chordae tendineae, okay? These chordae tendineae attached to these attached to these muscles which are known as the papillary muscles, okay? And the muscles around the ventricles in here are known as the trabeculae carneae or trabeculae muscles, okay? There are some other muscles in here in the atria which are known as the pectinate muscles, okay? So, let's now understand how the flow of the blood take place, and then we'll come back to this structure again. So blood actually comes from the superior and the inferior vena cava. What are these? These are veins, and the superior vena cava brings blood from the upper part of the body. Inferior brings it from the lower part of the body to the right atrium. And from the right atrium through the right AV valve, it goes to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle to the pulmonary semilunar valve, it goes to the pulmonary trunk, which divides into 2 parts, left and right pulmonary artery, okay, and which goes to the lungs. Once lungs, it goes, then there is exchange of CO2 with oxygen. Okay, so the blood that is coming from these parts, from the upper and the lower parts of the body, is deoxygenated. That is, it has less oxygen and has more CO2. And the blood that goes from the pulmonary trunk, therefore, is deoxygenated. But after it visits the lung, it becomes oxygenated. And this oxygenated blood then comes back to the left pulmonary veins to the left atria. From the left atria, it goes to the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the valve here is known as the left AV valve, which goes to the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle through the aortic semilunar valve, through the heart, it is divided or distributed to the whole body. You can see the aorta has 3 branchings, and each of these branchings actually go to the different parts of your body and gets distributed to the entire body. So the valves, there are 4 valves that we learned, right? And these are the 4 valves. This is the right AV valve. As you can see, this is tricuspid. Cuspid means flaps, and you can see there are 3 flaps in here. And this is the left AV valve, which is bicuspid, and there are 2, flaps in there. And these are the semilunar valves that are present. So we are going to learn about the heart model from there. So you can see this is the heart, and the heart has a covering which is known as a pericardial sac, which is a protective covering. And then there are the 3 layers, as you can see it in here. There is epicardium, myocardium, and the endocardium. So let's do this better. So this is epicardium, myocardium, and the endocardium. And I want you to notice that this myocardium in here is much thicker than the right myocardium. Why? The reason being that this part of the heart actually pumps blood to the entire body. Okay, so the muscles need to be much stronger in order to be able to pump blood to the entire body. On the other hand, the right myocardium needs to pump blood just to the lungs. As a result, the muscles does not need to be that strong. Okay, so let's understand the heart. So this is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, this is the left atrium, left ventricle. Okay, in between these two, this is the valve, which is known as the right AV valve or the tricuspid valve. And in here, this is the left AV valve or the bicuspid valve. In here, you can see these are the string-like structures. These are known as chordae tendineae, and they are attached to the papillary muscles, okay? And the muscles that the ventricles are made of are called the trabecular carne. So the point where the chordae tendineae attaches is the papillary muscles, and the rest of the muscles in the ventricles are the trabecular carne. Now, in addition, the ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum, as you can see, and the atrium is separated by interatrial septum. The muscles in the atria are known as the pectinate muscle. So now let's understand the flow of blood. So I want to mention one other thing before we go into the flow of blood is you can see the structure in here. Okay, the right atria and the left atria has this hair, ear-like structure on top, which are known as auricles. These auricles actually store excess blood that comes in, okay, before it goes into the right atrium. So let's understand the flow of blood. So the blood actually comes from the superior vena cava. This is a superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava to the right atrium. And through the right AV valve, it goes to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, so through the pulmonary semilunar valve, it goes to the pulmonary trunk. And then from the trunk, these come back to the left atria. The left atria, now it is oxygenated blood, remember, and this is the left AV valve, which goes into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, it passes through the aortic semilunar valve. It goes to the aorta, and then you can see the aorta has 3 branches, and these branches actually go to the different parts of the body. Okay, so again, if you look in closely, these are the chambers and these are the valves. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the valves. Okay, just remember the thickness of the left myocardium is much bigger than the right myocardium. Okay, so that's basically the entire heart's anatomy, so that you understand the 3-dimensional structure of the heart as well. Okay, thank you.